Okay, Chair. Okay, good morning and welcome to today's Strong Community Select Committee on Thursday the 4th of March. I'm County Councillor Lisa Dimmock for the Elms ND and Chair of this Select Committee. I'd just like to take a moment to remind members of general housekeeping. Please keep chat to a minimum in the chat bar, use hand up facility when you wish to speak, and please keep cameras and mics off when you're not speaking. We received a number of apologies for absence for today's meeting, but we do have other councillors who have kindly offered to step in. So Tony Eason is being substituted by Martin Groker, Anne Webb by Ruth Edwards, Draimi Chauhan by Councillor Maureen Powell. Maureen, I understand you wanted to just say a note for Peter Clark?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. Peter Clark is hoping to join us before too long, but he has had to attend a police meeting to start with. And as you know, sometimes meetings go on longer than you realise, but he will join us as soon as ever he can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. And if I can just ask members, when you do come to speak, can you just introduce yourself and say whether you are a member of this committee or you are substituting someone. So declarations of interest, we'll take these as and when. I don't believe we have anyone wanting to participate as members of the public and no request to join. So I'll move on to item 4, scrutiny of the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report 2019 to 2020. And we have the lovely Alan Burkitt presenting this, so I'll now hand over.
Well, good morning. I hope that I do this properly because I've never done one of these online before. So yeah, well, thanks very much for asking me to come in this morning. What we're looking at specifically is our old Strategic Equality Plan Annual Monitoring Report. So this started on the 1st of April 2016 and ended at the end of March last year. So it covered 4 years. We've completed all of the actions within it. And if I just go through really basically, just highlighting some of the sort of key actions I picked out. One objective was what was called making a difference, so working in partnership on projects that have a positive impact on people or groups of people with protected characteristics. One of the key ones, I think, was the post office we opened in Usk in May 2020, which is a really key sort of service for Usk town and surrounding area. Matt and Richard Matt Gatehouse, Richard Drinkwater and the team there have been operating that since it opened. It's been very successful. And that obviously in terms of our local people or elderly, disabled, etc., that can't access other post office facilities, it's a great service. Monlife with Mark Foster awarded the Disability Silver, the Disability Sportswear in Sports Development Silver Accreditation. Mouthful there of an award, but they've done fantastic work there and currently working on to the Gold Award. We were accepted as a council for the Disability Confident Committed Pledge, which we worked on since I think it was June 2019. Keeping our focus, and this was working with vulnerable people within Monmouthshire. We've done a lot of work. Obviously, COVID, I think, really our best work has been done since the start of the COVID pandemic, which came on the tail end of this particular project, protected characteristic. The work that Owen Wilson and the team have been doing with the volunteers, looking after the people who are shielding and so on. And our communication team working closely with Test and Trace Protect service, raising awareness amongst BAME community for the coronavirus. Celebrating and commemorating, this is really us as an organisation making sure that we are aware of the different events and awareness campaigns for people with protected characteristics. This is something we do so well as an organisation, especially through our comms team. We've got Fiona Ashley in our hub, just does the most immense amount of work with that. So the Holocaust Memorial event, our youth services team did a massive event, a pride event in Caldecott Castle. We celebrate violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, etc., etc. There's loads of stuff that we've done. We've just highlighted some of the sort of key areas there. Educating and guiding, working with staff and elected members, offering training, advice and guidance as and when required. And we keep on updating our equality impact assessment form. There's regular updates on those, but they are the things that allow elected members to make considered opinions on any policy changes, etc. And we've done a lot of work on cumulative impact assessment. This was pre sort of socioeconomic duty, which is coming in at the end of this month. And it's where we've looked at our proposals for increasing charges and making elected members aware of the potential impact on people on low income. So if you've got an increase in council tax, car parking, school meals, etc., if you add all those up for say a single parent family, it becomes quite a high proportion of their monthly income or weekly income goes on those additional expenditure. And to be fair, I think elected members have taken that on board and it's played a part in the decision making. Doing the basics. And this was what we were required to do under the Equality Act. We've done some really good work in terms of, say, the Disability Confident Pledge and the Armed Forces Covenant. With both of those, if you meet the minimum criteria, you are guaranteed an interview. I think that's a really positive thing for our sort of army veterans and for people with disabilities within our society. And we've got a new community. Well, again, of course, we're going back now. This is 4 previous years worth of work. We've got a community adhesion officer in place linked with Newport, and he's done some fantastic work linking in with our BAME community. And that's really, it's quite a big report. A lot of the actions have actually finished with this now, which is great, obviously, now because we've finished the 4 years with it. And what we thought we'd do then, we'd add a little piece then on our latest one, which we don't have to report on next. So we've got a new strategic equality plan, 2020 to 2024. We've got new strategic objectives. And we just thought we'd give you a little hint of what that's about and what we've done, because otherwise you won't find out until hopefully next year by about November. This was meant to go through in November for a number of reasons, COVID being one of them. Obviously, it was low down the pecking order of importance in terms of what we were doing as an authority. But this is, so here we go then. So we got our new strategic equality plan, which was agreed by council back in March of last year, giving children the best possible start in life, overcoming barriers to attainment opportunity. Now, we took a lot of the information from the wellbeing assessment, from Is Wales Fairer, etc., and work we obviously do as an organisation. So we've got children and young people have sufficient opportunity to participate in play and physical activity. And I think it's Mike, I can't remember his name now. He's currently carrying out an annual play sufficiency assessment. So looking at what we've got already, and having worked with him, he's looking at making sure that there's more accessible play equipment in the communities within Monmouthshire. Children with disabilities are able to access sporting activities. Again, this is a sort of recognition of the work that Mark Foster and the team are doing with the Disability Gold Sports Award. He's working towards that at the moment. Overcome inequalities in access to economic prosperity. That's the second objective. So people have the opportunity to raise their household income. Again, linked in with cumulative impact, linked in with a socio-economic duty. As you can see, these objectives are more specifically linked now to what we consider to be issues within Monmouthshire, and we're recognised as such. So the action there is to work as part of the Capital Regional Programme to attract high-skill, high-wage jobs. Continue to develop a tackling poverty plan for the county aligned to the aspirations of the social justice strategy. Obviously, there's a great piece of work going on with that. We've also got Jude and Ryan now working on poverty and inequality, and we had a seminar yesterday. So there's a lot of really good work going on in that field, which is immensely important. And again, it ties in with our socio-economic duty requirements. creating cohesive communities, getting better data about hate-based bullying. We've got a bullying inclusion task and finish group that's been working. It started in June, chaired by myself. The group's doing some fantastic work. And I would say at the moment it's concentrating more in terms of getting things right in schools, getting a consistent reporting process, getting that training out to the schools, and ensuring that when we get data at the end of the year, the schools are reporting in a consistent way. I think that's really important. And I think it's not going to be a task and finish group anymore. I think it's going to be a long-term group looking to make sure that the children within Monmouthshire have more protection and support and advice. Next one, we've got reduction in the effects of loneliness and isolation. Well, I think that's been an issue in Monmouthshire. I think we've known this as an authority for many a year, and we're working to deliver the outcomes under the Connected Monmouthshire Plan. So engagement with town and community councils, etc. Objective 4, to provide services that are accessible to our public and support our workforce. So one of those is a fully accessible website providing information about council services. I mean, the website is such a massive piece of work. Alex McConaughey does a tremendous piece of work with this. It's making it relevant, it's keeping it up to date, it's making sure also that it's understandable what's written on there, and that its design and so on is accessible to people with various with sight loss, etc., or with hearing loss. So he's carrying out a WCAG website accessibility project, and it's shown that our accessibility rating has increased across all sections or departments within that. So that's a really great piece of work that's ongoing. Improve services for dealing with mental health in Monmouthshire. So that's in part improving the support for workforce mental health. I know there's a meeting coming up next Monday in conjunction with Mind to look at mental health issues within Monmouthshire itself as well. Objective 5, we're nearly there. Create a diverse and inclusive workforce. So those working in key sectors such as home care less likely to experience in-work poverty. And I know that I think we either have or are going to pay the living wage to all council employees, which is really good news. And more people with disabilities applying to work for the county council. Now we're at the very start of this. I can probably tell you from this that we had a meeting about a fortnight ago. Department of Works and Pensions were there, and they said they are confident that we've attained level 1, which is level 1 committed, which is absolutely superb. And that we are now looking at what are the terms of level 2 and working towards that. That as well is called the Diversity Inclusion Task and Finish Group. We've agreed it's not a task and finish group. This is something that's ongoing. And I can't remember what we're going to call it. So I think it's the Accessibility and Inclusion Group. And I'm not sure that's absolutely right. I can check that. But we're going to be looking to keep that work going. Again, the both inclusion groups, the work they do and the ideas they come up with is fantastic. Difficult to share them because everyone's got so many different ideas. And then finally, reducing the gender pay gap in Monmouthshire County Council. That's a duty we've actually got under the Equality Act. There's a lot of work going on there with HR, people services to do that. And equal pay for work of equal value. And this is an ongoing thing with the single status agreement. Any new jobs that come about are assessed to ensure that they are being paid the right money for the job they do. So that's an absolute whistle-stop tour of our new strategic quality plan, and just a few of the actions that we've caught up with. Okay. You're on mute.
Thank you, Alan. So I'll hand over to members now for questions. Is there a hand up facility going to appear in the chat bar?
Yes, Chair, we're just having a technical issue with that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask, Alan, will members be invited to this meeting on Monday with Mind, or is that just for officers?
That's a good question. Can you bear me a second? Let me just check. If I can just find that on my, I can find out for you. I'll make a note and find out with you. Just
If you
Bernadette
could come
Elias.
back to me, because there might be some members who attend Strong Communities who would like to come along. So the raise hand, I'll let Councillor Petruni come first.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alan. Comprehensive as ever, and I have a little notebook of questions because I'm sad and I need to get a life. We both know it's not going to happen, but hey ho. I was struck by what you said in yesterday morning's meeting, and it's something I've thought for a while as well, around how this strategy, I mean, I've noticed that it's linked to, I've counted 8 other strategies. So many strategies, too many plans, mapping, and there's a lot of words like dovetailing and collaboration. I'm not convinced that 8 strategies is the most efficient way of pushing this agenda forward. And I just wondered your thoughts on that, because it feels like to me, if I was in an organisation that had 8 strategies dealing with similar issues, I'll be going, well, hang on a minute, we need to condense this and be more focused. So where do you see this plan as a kind of, do you see it as is it the overarching umbrella, or is it the social justice strategy? I'm really unclear. The cabinet member says it dovetails, but then I've read both reports and it doesn't. I mean, in some areas they cross over, but I wouldn't call it dovetailing. They don't pick up the different strands of each strategy. It's what I class dovetailing as. So just your thoughts on that.
Do you want me to answer that now? Because I think that's quite.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think it's a very good point. Obviously, this particular strategy is one that's sort of governed by legislation. So under the Equality Act 2010, we've got to have this. This is part of our responsibility under that particular duty. I do know where we're coming from, because there is I think what's got to be commended is there's an awful lot of work going on, but I think you're probably right. It's very difficult then to dovetail. It's not a word I particularly use, but I appreciate what you're coming to. It is difficult, and I think it's about putting it all together. They around the dovetail, I think they overlap. That might be a better description of it. And it is difficult. I think what we need to commend is the fact that there's an awful amount of good work going into this particular agenda. And I think possibly you're right. It does need to gel a bit more, because I'm involved in quite a lot of it, and there's other people involved in what I do, and they're involved in social justice, etc., etc. And I think perhaps some of it is groups that's arising out of some of the groups that already exist. So I know that's not a very good answer, and probably shows I'm a bit confused perhaps about how it does dovetail. But we do talk together as groups of people, so there is that interaction there, and the pieces of work are quite sort of discrete. But yeah, perhaps that is a piece of work we need to do, is to try and link it all in together. Whether the strategic equality plan, because this legal status is the overarching one, and then these feed down. That's probably right. I think perhaps it's us being a little bit too keen to do so much work that it is perhaps not structured quite as neatly as it should be. That's me giving an honest answer, but and that's not a criticism.
I like honest answers, and I think that work needs to be done. I mean, I'm not saying in the next week or so, but if a lot of plans overlap, you're going to get inefficiencies, and you're going to get doubling of work that might not be doubled, or miss something. But yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that's ongoing work. I have a few more questions, Chair, if that's all right. I don't know.
That's fine.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, I've opened these things so I can refer to them. I was struck by what you said yesterday, again in the equality meeting in the morning, and about the budget. And please correct me from what you said, and I'm going from memory now. I didn't write it down. But you basically said it seems like when it came to finances, the kind of poverty and equality piece seems to be, you didn't use the word afterthought, but it seems to happen after the finances have been thought through, rather than at the start of the budget consideration. So yeah, please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But on that point around the budget, sorry, the dog just walked in, Jesus. Is it says, and the cabinet member in her little piece says in your foreword says, and I'm quoting here, we believe in social justice and are committed to a fair and equal society. And then I look at the budget and then it's not. And I'm just wondering to what extent this strategic equality plan influenced the budget setting process. I'll give you an example. In the budget, it says that it acknowledges that increases in fees and charges will disproportionately hit vulnerable groups in Monmouthshire and vulnerable households. In fact, it uses the words lower income households and gives you a figure, I think around 9,000 from memory. That doesn't fit within our strategic equality plan, doesn't even fit within the social justice strategy, yet we're increasing fees and charges on the most vulnerable in this county when we know they're suffering the most. So I suppose that's not the point I want to make, that's just the evidence. The point is, at what point does this plan, the social justice plan, influence the budget setting process at the beginning rather than what we are now at the end?
That's a really good question. I think there's a slight confusion there. I think when I was referring to the quality impact assessment process or the FG assessment, there's a bit of confusion over what it's actually called. I call it the EQIA FGE, but it's an assessment document that looks at technical characteristics and ensuring that when we are making decisions, be it policy changes, etc., that we consider that we're not disadvantaging people from the protected characteristics. And I again, being honest, we do tend to produce these particular documents when a report is going to council or to cabinet, rather than using them to actually shape the process early on. And I think it shouldn't be that way, because when you go to fill those forms in a late part, you can be influenced by what you're wanting to do. So you're really trying to tailor the assessment to meet the decision, rather than using the assessment to. It's like a checklist, really. So we're going to do such and such. Well, hang on, is this going to have an adverse impact on elderly people, or the young people, disabled people, people from BME backgrounds, etc.? That's what it should be doing. We're doing it at the end, which is and it's not as effective at the end. I think that's what it is. So in terms of the strategic equality plan, it's not the plan itself. It's the sort of safeguards or the processes within the Equality Act, so to speak. So the EQIA should be the process whereby we look to ensure that we don't disadvantage people. And yeah, we've got, as an organisation, I say we've got to start looking at that document at an earlier stage, and I think then we can have a more positive impact on that particular process, whatever the decision is, whatever's been proposed by officers, etc. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, Chair, if I may come back in. It does make sense, and I totally agree. It definitely seems like a checklist thing at the end, rather than I suppose what I know political decisions and financial decisions have to be made,
yeah,
but I rather them be made at the start with in mind what you've just discussed, yeah. And then it's thought, actually still we're going to carry on. But like you said, it definitely feels like we're going to make this decision. Oh, and what's the effect? And yeah. There is a subtle difference, and you might come out with a different policy, or you might tweak it slightly that could make a massive difference just because you've considered it at the start.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, and you can still make the same decision at the end.
Exactly.
As long as you can look at mitigations and you can justify it, because what it's saying is it doesn't mean you can't make a decision. It'll still say, as long as you've got the evidence to say we considered it, but balance the probability. We looked at mitigation, so we say, well, we'll make sure that we don't charge these people so much or whatever. I think I mentioned that yesterday as well about.
You did. And last question, Chair. I'm sorry, I promised. Page 19. It refers to the EUSS scheme. European Union settlement scheme, and declaration of interest. I'm the senior analyst on European legislation for the MOJ, so I don't know if that's prejudicial or anything. And the citizens' rights organisation that's attached to the MOJ, and it's become struck from our research that great, we've held an event, great, we've shown EU nationals what they should apply for, but it's become clear that children in care, so we're talking protected characteristics, which our plan should cover, children in care and elderly EU citizens, so maybe in a home, maybe suffering from dementia, they're over-reliant on local authorities to apply for them. I'm not saying we haven't, I'm just saying, have we? Because they're the most vulnerable groups. And I asked this question of Julie Boothroyd 2 weeks ago and I haven't had a reply. And I'm wondering if you're cited on this. How many EU nationals children are in care for us, and how many are in care homes suffering from cognitive impairments, for want of a more diplomatic phrase? And are we making sure they are accessing their rights they need? Thank you, Chair.
Again, an honest answer, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, with a very wide area to cover, I don't get down into that sort of detail, and a lot of these actions are actually taken on by officers. I think probably Shazmian would be the person would be better to ask that, although I don't know whether he'd have that level of detail in terms of those people. But it's a very good question. That's possibly what some of these projects need to sort of dig down a little bit deeper. I mean, obviously, you chaired this particular group have got far more knowledge than we have on this particular issue, but it's an interesting, very interesting question. But Shaz, I would think, is probably the person to ask on that. Perhaps a piece of work that he could do as a suggestion.
Should I email Shaz individually, or would the committee want to be cited?
If we could be cited, so I'll send the email after this meeting if you want.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to tell the people watching that I'm County Councillor Maureen Powell, a councillor for Castlewood and Abergavenny, and today I'm standing in on behalf of Jamie Trehan because he's unable to come. Mine isn't exactly a question to Alan. It is just that I couldn't really agree with what Dimitri said about things overlapping and getting muddled. You cannot put problems into little compartments. Everything in this world overlaps and affects different people and knocks on from things. So I don't think you can say you can't have overlapping, because that's what life's like. So I just like to make that comment and ask Alan what he, does he feel the same as I do, that you can't put things into complete separate compartments. There's always going to be overlapping.
Yes, I think, to be fair, I think there's an element of what Councillor Petruni is saying and what Councillor Powell is saying. It is very difficult. And I think I go back to my bit. I think it's to be commended that there's such a fantastic amount of work going on, and the commitment and the work ethic. I was in a seminar yesterday with Poverty and Inclusion, linking in with a lot of our volunteers and organisations across Monmouthshire, and the level of what can I put it now? Real commitment to get stuff done and make a difference, I think, is fantastic. And you're both right. It is very difficult to try and pull all that together into a very neat sort of set of boxes. Whether they get jumbled up, I don't know. But we do talk. We do talk together, and we are involved in different pieces of work. So there is that sort of crossover. But I think great that we are doing this work, and the people are working so hard on it. And I think possibly the most important thing is we don't miss anything out, and we don't miss it because there's too much going on. It's just making sure. But everyone's got the discrete bits of work to do. So I think from that perspective it's okay. But great, it could be, rather than sitting here and saying we got a councillors actually doing nothing, it's great to say we got a councillors doing lots of really good work.
Thank you very much, and I want to
For
commend you
balance.
on all the work that you do, Alan, in this sphere. It's so valuable, and we do appreciate it, and I'm sure the people that it affects appreciate you as well. Thank you very much.
Well, I think it's more it's officers. I'm just reporting back. It's the officers do the work, and I just try and pull it together. So I pester them to do that. So.
I think, Lisa, you're on mute.
Sorry.
I can't
Can you
see
hear
a
me now?
hand. Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you, Lisa, if it's all right if I could come in, because I
Of
haven't got
course
a
you
hand
can.
facility.
Yeah,
I
no,
only, I'm standing in, County Councillor Ruth Edwards, Llantillo Cresceni. I am standing in for Councillor Anne Webb, who's got other duties today. It's very interesting. I haven't been part of Strong Community Committee for quite some time, but I can only reiterate, really, I can understand where Dimitri's coming from, but as Councillor Powell has said, life does integrate with so many different things, and as you're saying about a lot of volunteers and so on, they can all bring, no one size fits all, and they all bring something separately to the table, and at the end we have a consensus of the best way forward. And I think, you know, you shouldn't be able to, so as you say, put it in different compartments, because life, as we say, is not like that, and one thing can bounce off another, and at the end you hope you make the best decision to move forward. So, but I do thank you very much for the presentation. It's been very interesting. Thank you, Alan.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Alan now? No? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chairman. I haven't got a hand or anything on my screen. I had trouble
Okay.
this morning. Can I just make a plea, please, for reports? A couple of little typo errors going through, but that doesn't matter. The use of coloured print in reports, Alan, is very difficult for some people to actually cope with. There are a couple of references here to websites and such like, and I personally had considerable trouble with the one, so I think we need to clearly think about how we present reports. And I just wanted to ask, the reference on page 22 to the Access for All forum. Now that was the successor really to CARE, wasn't it, of Jenny's? Initially had a good takeoff. What's the progress now, please? Because it's very important. It was well attended in County Hall. Now we seem to have lost that contact, and that is so important that people are able to communicate and talk.
Yeah. If I address the print one first, you're absolutely right. I think it's something that, and I've got to wear these now, and without them I struggle. I can see
now.
But you are right, and I think it's something the accessibility survey is going to look at. I mean, the RNIB say that Arial 12 font as a minimum should be what are used. Make sure you have contrasting colours, so the text is the same, is vivid on a white background, etc. I think sometimes people do get excited about making sure that something looks pretty, but if you can't read it,
it's no good.
Yeah, it's no good at all. I agree with you. And different fancy fonts. Arial is the clearest font for people with visual issues. So I think it's something that we've got a meeting coming up fairly shortly, actually, with the authors of the website, and that's perhaps something we'll mention. That just make sure that when you're designing stuff, to make sure it's nice and clear. Having stuff, you have sort of postmark stuff. So you got text in the background, you've got like draft across it, and that can sometimes affect your ability to read that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right.
No, if you could consider that. And also, how is the Access for All forum functioning now?
Right, you were absolutely right. It was the late great Jenny Barnes's CARE was the actual the driving force. An Access for All forum did exist. It sort of morphed into that because we wanted to get greater engagement. We haven't met for a while, but I think there's a meeting coming up fairly shortly, hopefully, led by Tony Crowhurst. We attended one in Torvine the other day, which was really well attended. I think it's a case of trying to get it back together again. If I'm honest, a lot of the members of CARE, once Jenny died, sadly, a lot of them sort of retired out of that sort of area because they were, for want of a better word, they were getting elderly, and I think they'd sort of run their fight, because they had their children were 50+ years of age and disabled. I think they'd sort of thought, well, we've done our bit now. We've fought our fight, and have retired from that sort of scene. And a couple of other people in the group died as well. So that group they're still part of this. Is an accessibility group in Abergavenny run by Felicity Brannigan. So that's very active. But I know that Tony and ourselves, including Hazel, we're keen to get something going, because it is great to have that external scrutiny of what we're doing, and a group that departments can go to and ask questions. I think it's really important.
Yeah, it comes down to whether it's the format, whether it's the accessibility, people can actually get there, but there is a huge need for such a format. The service users, they are the ones who know where the true weaknesses are, and believe me, there are weaknesses. So I do hope that forum soon regenerates and it becomes good fake. Thank you, Chairman.
Smith, they are meeting again and had their second meeting. Tony Crowhurst chairs it, and if any members want to join, they can. Can you just let me or Hazel know?
Yeah, well, initially, Chairman, I did, and with Councillor Pratt, we attended numbers of meetings. Then we seemed to fall out of the system. So, yeah, better communication, but no, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
I think the point Councillor Smith's making, I think the online version will be a good idea, I think, because obviously travelling issues for people with disabilities and some of the more elderly groups in society, I think they're going to struggle perhaps to get transport. But if it goes online, as long as they've got internet access, I think that will probably get better attendance. So I think I'll try and find out where the next meeting is.
Yeah, the attendance is important, but again, putting things online, people will not necessarily go and look. And actually, it can do people good to get out of their homes. Should we be looking at providing decent transport? No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay,
thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wasn't going to say anything, but I just want to say I did attend the meeting with Alan that was held. It was chaired by Torvine, and I do find it extremely valuable. From my own portfolio, I would really like to engage more, so that I can really hear about the issues facing especially the disabled community, walking in our streets, dealing with shopping, parking and all the other issues that are in my portfolio. So I'm very keen that we really build a strong communication here, and I want to give it my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Are there any more questions from members? No? Okay. Well, thank you for attending today, Alan. Oh, it was lovely to see you.
And you.
We'll now move on to item 5, investment in highways operations for maintenance drainage network in line with the Code of Practice well-maintained highways infrastructure. And I believe we've got Carl, Steve and Sue Ann presenting this report.
Hi councillors, thanks for the invite today. Firstly, my apologies for delaying getting the report out to you all, and the working title of the report is not an exact reflection of the report, but hopefully you've had a chance to read it and you can see where we were going with the update on what we're trying to achieve. So the idea that the report is an investment in highways operations, specifically for the maintenance of drainage network in line with the Code of Practice for well-maintained highways. The code came out in 2018-19, and obviously COVID in between. We're a little bit behind in catching up with what the report recommendations were and where we are in our own delivery of services. So it's to deliver, as I said, it's to deliver the Code of Practice for well-maintained infrastructure. The code moves away from specific guidance and works on a risk-based approach to determining what we should be doing on the highways network. So what we're proposing is we invest in in the highways maintenance team established a proactive find and fix regime to reverse the impact of budget reductions that we've seen over the last few years. The report sets out as prevention is always better than cure, and I think that's quite clear through all of the highway guidance that we've seen over the last few years, is that it's always better to prevent. So this report set out what we can do. Keeping the debris out of the roadway, keeping the debris out of the drains is clearly easier and better than going into the drains and having to dig up roads for the public. So this is a three-pronged approach. It is about cleaning the roads, it is about keeping the gullies, emptying the gullies and cleaning them out, and then where we have issues in the gullies, about a full maintenance programme that will be prioritised in line with the code. The recommendations are to increase the funding for the maintenance, to increase funding for the sweeping of priority routes, and to deliver a cyclical programme of maintenance for drainage assets, and to identify and plot all the drainage assets in the county. So I'm sure you're all aware the last 18 months of flooding, climate change is real. It is with us, much higher levels of rainfall, much more frequent events, and that is having a negative impact on the highway infrastructure. On top of that, the intention of the Code of Practice is that authorities develop their own process and programmes that meet local needs and priorities, but are also affordable. So that's the fourth element of what we're trying to do, is keep the drains clean, is the first element, clean them out if they're blocked, but then if there is any big works that need to be done, we prioritise those work and get that work completed. We did a similar programme between 2000 and 2011 where we cleaned out all the highways drainage, almost 25,000 drains cleared, and that worked really well. We've since then had a more reactive regime of cleaning the drains. When someone reports a blocked drain, we go into that area, clean out all of the drains in that area. With the recent events and flooding events, that's becoming ever more difficult. We have 2 vehicles currently that do this work. Ideally, they go into an area and clear them all, but when you're being asked to clear many drains in many areas, we're having to prioritise that work as we go through as well. So we're not suggesting anyway that doing additional maintenance work on our drainage system is going to stop flooding. The drainage system is not designed for the types of events we've had, Storm Dennis, Storm Christoph, but a well-maintained infrastructure and drainage will support particularly well when it's normal rain events, and we are seeing more of those as well. So this is about getting our system up to speed, plotting everything, and then knowing what we want to do moving forward. So the programme, the idea of the programme is a 4-year programme. We get around all the priority areas, which are our precautionary salting routes. So they're the main roads, the main areas that we have concerns about, main transport routes for our residents and emergency services. We clear out those drains. 4 years' time, we believe we can achieve that. Then we review where we are. We either keep the machine and carry on doing our work, move out into the wider area, or we may find that we have a lot of priority areas within there, or we pull back from it. You know, we are in this position because of budget savings over the last 10 years. It may be in 4 years that we're in a much better position and we're going to need to save money again. So the options will come in 4 years' time when we review this and decide what we want to do. Clearly, we can't do everything. You know, landowners have riparian rights of some of the drainage ditches, and you know, we'll be asking those to take on some of their responsibilities as well, with us, supporting us and doing that together. Welsh Water have a lot of drainage systems that were overcome during the recent floods, and obviously Natural Resources Wales own the main rivers and main brooks and tributaries into those rivers. So we can't do this alone, but we already work with these partners, ensuring our own network is free flowing and running properly. will help assist us in putting pressure on these other people to get their systems up and running properly. So it's a way of us moving forward and staying in line with the code of practice. Climate change is here. We're going to see more rain. The likelihood is more people are going to be flooded. But if we can get water off the road quicker, because that's what people believe is part of the problem, and we can do a precaution, better than prevention, and precaution better than cure. Public perception is not good about highways, not just in Monmouthshire but across the UK. They feel that the network is not being delivered on at a high enough level. So this is partly to support what the public perception is and get the drainage cleared. We've recently cleared out the drains in Mega and Port Stewart following the flooding in December, and none of the drains that we cleared in the area of the flooding were blocked at a level that would have added or contributed to that flooding. The main cause of the flooding was the rivers and water courses coming down through those areas. So when the water course blocks up, it pushes the drain back up and the drain overflows. That isn't a drain blocked, it's the fact that the water can't escape into the water course. But we do know in a normal rain event, a clear drain will flow much more freely. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. It's an additional 18-ton road sweeper. It's an additional gully Vactor machine for emptying the drains and clearing out the lines. And then if we're doing the priority routes, most of them are over 30-mile-an-hour routes, we'll need a traffic management team. So the costs of that are not cheap. These machines are not cheap at all, and running the system is going to come in somewhere around £362,000 a year. We're looking to fund this from a range of capital and revenue funding, either as a budget pressure, which would be an uplift in the highways revenue budget, or through redistribution of the capital programme. One of the issues with redistribution of the capital programme is that it would take other works off that list and put money directly into this maintenance. So, but we have been given quite a lot of funding from Welsh Government over the last year for dealing with funding, so it does sort of back up that funding stream as well. So as Welsh Government give us more money, we can't rely on that if we're buying a machine and bringing in a crew. We can't rely on that money, but that money could support in the capital programme into next year. So we're not 100% clear how it can be funded yet, because we're not 100% clear of what funding streams Welsh Government are going to offer up for next year to deal with the funding, with the flooding issues. So that's part of where we've got to. What we'd like from Strong Community Select is your views on what we can do better, whether the priority routes are the right routes. We believe they are, but we're open to that conversation, and where we think we can go with local landowners, and particularly putting more pressure on NRW to keep their waterways clear as well. So it's a pretty topical conversation. We've just come out of 2-3 pretty big floods this year, and just before going into the COVID lockdowns of last year, we had 2 major floods at that point as well. So it's close to all of us, certainly close to our residents. So that's the report, and happy to take questions. If the questions are on the code of practice, I'll ask you to answer, and if it's on technical issues on the highway, I'll get Steve to answer those questions where I can answer them, if that's okay.
Thank you, Carl. I'll go straight to members. So we've got Councillor Petruni first, and then Councillor Edwards coming in.
Thank you, Chair. Carl, you're pleased to know I actually agree with this report. We can't say that recently, can we? I welcome the reverse of the budget cuts the council have imposed over the last decade in this area. It's timely to do this. I recognise there were budgetary pressures, but as you've alluded to and been very careful to say, the flooding hasn't been caused by this, but we can help avoid, I think I hope I've phrased that correctly, future flooding, or maybe limit the extent of the flooding, or as best we can. So I welcome this change. Two questions. One is people parking on greens. It happens in my ward all the time, but I know it happens elsewhere. And then them loosening up the ground, mud, and then pulling off. Is that any kind of contributing factor? Because sometimes I've seen my ward when it rains, those bits of public land that people park on, they don't park on their drives, they park on grass, and they turn it into a mud pile, and then that mud spreads all over across and into the drains. Is that a thing, or is that just kind of ward specific? And how can we stop that? Because I get huge complaints about that. Is it a police matter, or can we do something about that? And cutting of grass. When we cut grass, I get endless complaints from residents that when we cut grass, say in spring and the summer, we just let the grass go everywhere and go into the drains. Are we saying we're not going to do that anymore? Are we going to pick up, when we cut the grass, are we collecting at the same time? Or are we saying we're going to cut the grass and then we'll have a road sweeper that comes maybe a week later to pick up any remnants? I'm just unclear on that bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Carl, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I think I can answer most of them. I'm sure Steve might have a more technical answer that he can add on the end. Obviously, people parking on the verges, that's one of the issues that we had in Mega, people parking on the verges, pushing the mud across the top of the drain. So whilst the drain was free flowing below it, the mud being pushed onto the drain causes a problem with the water running over the top of it. So yes, it's an issue. It's certainly not an issue just for Councillor Batrumi's ward. It's across the board we see those issues. We also have larger vehicles using the lanes that push into the side of the verge, which brings down mud and covers those drains as well. So it is across the board. It's not just in urban areas. We are seeing more of it in rural areas as well. Parking, I will speak with colleagues Paul Keeble's team and the parking enforcement team to see if there's more we can do about keeping people off these verges. It's partly a police issue, but it's partly our own issue now as well, because we've got civil parking enforcement officers that may be able to support. Equally, it is difficult for residents that live in areas with, you know, the roads weren't designed for families to have 3 and 4 cars, and that's where many of us are now. So parking is becoming increasingly difficult, and people will park wherever they can to get as close to their house as possible. So it's a little bit of a two-pronged attack of it. It is about educating the public not to park on there, and because of the problems that it causes for everyone else as well, and for the flooding. So we do need to do a bit more work on educating people and raising awareness of the issues it causes. Our own grounds maintenance teams, we started last year doing cut and collect in some areas. This was to take the goodness out of the grass and help support wildflower growing. So we are doing more cut and collect. Historically, we've done cut and fly, which is just cutting and leaving the grass in situ. We recognise that blows around then. The idea of this would be that the sweeper would work closely with both the gully sucker and with some of our other maintenance issues. So whether we're out cutting hedges back or whether we're cutting grass, the sweeper could be in the same sort of area and clear it up. I would hope it wouldn't be a week later. I would hope we can try and manage it so it's being done more regularly and keeping on top of these. You know, we know that things that we do also contribute to stuff going down the drain. So the better we can get, the more we can expect the public to get better with it as well. Hopefully that answers Councillor Batrumi's question.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Lovely. Next, we've got Ruth Edwards.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Steve. Nice to see you this morning. Obviously, I'm not usually on this committee. The main issue, as you were saying, about long grass going into drains and so on, that is a problem. But I suppose if you cut your lawn more often, you haven't got so much grass to be such a problem. And also, obviously, you know, I'm farming, that we can't cut hedges until September. So it is an issue sometimes when the road has been swept and then the hedges are cut, and obviously the bits of twigs and so on go into the drains. And so perhaps some dialogue with the local farmer, if they've got roadside hedges, could be, you know, sort of some sort of dialogue, what is being done when, because most farmers now do have to rely on contractors now that cut hedges. And obviously he's got a list of who he does what, where and so on. Sometimes you'd like to get it done at a certain time, but if he's got a long list of people wanting to do it, you have to wait your turn. So that can be a bit of an issue. Thankfully, the drains have been working a lot better lately. And I'm glad to say they're working on Whitehall Lane at the moment. It's not Whitehill, it is Whitehall, because that has been in desperate need of some attention. I don't know who is overseeing the work on there that they've now started this week, because there's two drains halfway up the pitch, one on the left that has been blocked for years. There's a bridge at the bottom there where the water could flow into the top of that, but doesn't because of the verge, needs cutting right back. And on the opposite side, halfway up the pitch by a salt box, there is a gully, and that has been blocked. So the water comes all the way down to the pitch into the bottom, causing flooding. And then when water is stood there for weeks on end, it is undermining the surface of the road. And so that is quite a problem in Whitehall Lane. Because of the steepness of the pitch, my husband went up there yesterday, as they're working and cleaning, it is very slick. And my eldest son, who's farming there now, had to tow up the milk tanker, and they're Arctic lorries, they're not little lorries, with the tractor, because they were, you know, couldn't get up the pitch. This is where we've had big problems on that road. And it, you know, the dairy themselves have said if something isn't done about it because of health and safety, they will not be able to collect that milk, which would be catastrophic for any business. And further up the lane to the Lungatic Road, they say you can't drive a car up there because the road surface has got so bad. The water comes down these pitches and it causes gullies on the side. And so they've got big issues. But now, thank goodness, at long last, they're going to do that lane. So I congratulate at long last getting around to that. As you know, we've had the big problems in Skenthriff, and the river is there. It's not going to alter. You've been excellent in all that you've been trying to do with the residents. Some of them are newcomers to the area, and I'm afraid we are not going to stop the river flowing down there. And when I talk to a lot of people in the farming fraternity, because this obviously is very rural, I think the answer, but it doesn't go well with the environmentalists, although we look after the environment, as you know. The dredging of these rivers to increase capacity would help a great deal, but that is another issue on another platform again. But the capacity isn't there now, and then the water has got to go somewhere, and where does it go? It floods, and we've got a lot more water. But I don't know who oversees that, Steve, on Whitehall Lane, where those drains are on that pitch. But thank you ever so much, and thank you to see that you're going to be proactive and not reactive in a lot of these cases, because it does save, a stitch in time can save 9. And I think that, I know it's difficult. We haven't got the workforce as we used to have. I don't know, do you take on apprenticeships and so on now, that as long as they're being overseen, that they can learn a lot from doing these sort of things? Because obviously now we're going to have a lot of people, not just youngsters leaving school, but a lot of people that after furloughs, maybe the autumn, we're going to have a lot of people working, you know, to find some different, very different maybe occupations. And let's face it, if they're out in the countryside and in the open air, that's a plus for anybody. So thank you both very much indeed for the presentation. Sorry I've taken so long. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Steve, Carl, do you want to come in?
Steve, for Whitehall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Yes, we try to be proactive. We try not to be reactive. We try to focus our work, and we try to make sure that we're keeping the road safe. Any material that ends up in the road can end up in the gully, so any mud on the road ends up in the drainage system. The drains are designed to have a sump, so technically each drain at the bottom of it has got a sump which is about 2 foot deep. The heavy material falls into that sump and the water goes out of the pipes. The problem is, if we don't empty the sumps quickly enough and often enough, that heavy debris gets into the pipes, into the outfalls, and ultimately whatever. Highways don't put any mud on the road. We don't put any grass or clip-ins or hedge cutters on the road. They are third-party people. That debris is the responsibility of the third party to clear up after them. We can help and support by programming our work, but ultimately it's the responsibility of the people who put the debris on the road to clear it up. Enforcement and the likes is a long way off, as we discussed resources and availability. But the thing about this project and this aim is, after 4 years' time with Sue-Ann's team and her efforts and skills with the data collection and evidence, we'll have a network, hopefully, that we can target our maintenance. So we come to White Lane and maybe empty that gully at the bottom of the hill or by the salt bin more regularly, and perhaps one that's in the middle of the town centre. So that's our aim. Recently, about our input against my sort of better judgments, we've taken on 5 new people last year, just before COVID. We've taken on 5 new capable young guys, fit, healthy people who are engineering backgrounds, highways backgrounds. They're all inputting into the work we're talking about. Financially, it's a really very much a tightrope, because we have to support those guys by doing things in projects and bringing income from outside. So every pound of tarmac I buy to fill a pothole, I have to generate almost £1 worth of income from my revenue to pay for that tarmac. So that's where we are. 18 months ago, we took on 2 cadets. So we have 2 cadets, currently youngsters, going through a vigorous training routine, almost back to where we were with the old cadets 20 years ago. So they're coming through to the end of their 2 years of training. We will assess those guys, but they're very capable, very enthusiastic young gentlemen. We hope to bring them on into the team and have them as another asset to support these projects that we're doing at the moment. So hopefully that answers those questions, Councillor Edwards and Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Edwards, do you wish to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just one thing, whether I think I pressed something or other now. Sorry, I don't know what I've done there. But I'm just wondering, are there any, strong, fit young ladies in school who want to do that sort of thing? Because, there's nothing wrong with it. If you can pick up a shovel and do something, I mean, it's a great thing to be able to do. And I think, as it's in the open air, a lot of that sort of work. I know we've got a lot of girls in the offices and so on like that, but whether we have got any, Steve, I don't know.
On a note, what you want to do is recruit people from horse riding stables. All girls who have horses know their way around a shovel. Talking from experience during my teenage years. Yes, thank you. But perhaps we're not encouraging that, but that goes back to schools and education and that sort of thing. I think people, as I say, will have to perhaps change their occupation a great deal now after COVID. The sooner COVID's out the way, so much the better. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Next, we've got Councillor Powell, and then I'll have Councillor Grocott.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Carl, I think I don't know what to say to you or to Steve. A lot of the problems around me are on the trunk roads, which of course are the responsibility of the Welsh Government. Do you have any powers of pushing them in any directions at all? One of the worst places just outside Abergavenny, as you probably know, is by the Lynfoes Bridge on the 4042. And for years and years, I know that our MP and our Assembly member have been pushing to get something done there. And have you any pressure at all that you can put onto them? Because I know that it's not our responsibility, it is theirs. And but I would say thank you for all the work you do. The roads you look after are far better.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Powell. We work closely with Sutra. We manage some of the maintenance contracts for them in this area. So certainly now when I speak with the Sutra officers, which we do about every 3 months, I'll raise these concerns with them. We've seen quite a lot of flooding on the Llanellan Bridge and other roads that they maintain. So we know it's an issue. They know it's an issue. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can do something on those main routes around your area. We're lucky in some ways that we do the maintenance for them, so we have some input into the priority list. Equally, they are struggling as much as we are in financial terms, and they are trying to cover the total Wales network, so they have bigger priority roads than ours sometimes, sadly. But I'll certainly raise these concerns with them now and see if we can get something done. What we'd like to do is do a route with them so that we're in the same sort of areas and clearing the same sort of areas and moving on. So if they can do something with us, I know that they're looking at a similar program now of monitoring all their assets for the same code. So that they are looking to do something as well, and perhaps we could trial something between the both of us.
That's very good of you. I mean, the ideal thing was if you could just raise the road and have drains going underneath so the water could flood from field to field instead of going across the road. But I mean, that's a bit simplified. But I must speak, as I find, because my ward is Castle Ward and I have the A40 going through it. And I must say that Sutra are very, very good. If I report something to them, they act on it immediately and send it on to you. So I want, thank you to you and to them for that. But it's a big issue there because it closes the whole road for a long time. But thank you very much, and I shall look forward to perhaps us having a result in the end. Thank you very much for your report as well.
Okay, that's Councillor Powell.
Councillor Grocott.
Thank you, Chair. Just to introduce myself, I'm Martin Grocott and I'm the County Councillor for the Lansdowne Ward in Abergavenny, standing in for Tony Eason today. Carl, it's I think one of the first times I've ever seen a report that acknowledges that we've had 10 years of austerity imposed on us from London, and congratulations on that. The report itself, I think, is really an attempt to undo much of the damage done by austerity to get back to a position that we were probably in several years ago. And in your introduction, you were saying that that system is already inadequate for the weather situations that are increasingly arising. In other words, we have a report here that is saying we need to invest to become slightly less inadequate. I'm wondering if, as a county, we are in a position where we are actually planning for the future and planning for drains that in the longer term will be fit for purpose, whereas our present ones, apparently by your own admission, are in some ways inadequate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. It is partly due to a lack of funding. It is also with us trying to get back, trying to work now to the new code of practice and a risk-based assessment. So hopefully the report reflects the both. We know that we've had disinvestment in highways operations and we've had to make savings. So there is no getting away from that. We are where we are, and we do need at some point to reinvest in service delivery to move that forward. I'm not sure that we're inadequate in what we deliver, but there is the challenge now with increased rainfalls and all of these issues adding to our problems and making it more difficult for us to keep the network free flowing with these problems. The reactive system, proactive system that Steve delivers works very well, but when you have 3 or 4 storms on top of each other, and that's what I was felt since Christmas, is we've either been in a storm or we've been in a snow. it's very difficult then to get on top of this work with the 2 vehicles that we have. So we're asking for some additional investment into that to take that forward. But yeah, I would agree, you know, we have some disinvestment in the highways operations, and we do need to turn it around if we want to keep on top of the network that we've got.
Thank you. I think, Mark, you want to come in as well?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, if I could. Thanks, Councillor Grockoff, for your question. In terms of how we're planning for the future in terms of drainage and flooding, the requirement for all new developments to incorporate sustainable urban drainage schemes, SUDS, is in place, has been in place for a couple of years. So as things come through, you'll see those schemes being implemented. It's going to require a bit of a culture change in many ways, because a lot of that is about having surface water dealt with on site rather than draining off into drains. So you'll start to see things like gullies, roadside drains and lagoon features on development sites, and during adverse weather they will be full of water, which will probably raise some alarm with residents, but they'll be doing exactly what they're intended to do. So that's happening, and those regs apply to all kinds of schemes. So town centre region schemes, highway schemes, they all have to comply. So all of that drainage going forwards will be catering for sustainable drainage methods. So yeah, we are planning for that aspect in the future going forwards.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Burkhart, do you want to come back in?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thank you, Mark. It's good to know that planning in new development is going on. But Carl half answered my question, I think. Are we actually saying that the current drainage system we've got, which isn't adequate to deal with increasingly bad weather, is just being written off and can't be improved? Is that the situation, Carl? Are we actually saying that in 50 years' time we will still be using an inadequate system?
I hope, Councillor, that in 50 years' time we're not dealing with climate change and we've moved away from the causal problems of it, so we're not seeing these weather things. But the drainage systems are historically designed to deal with a 1 in 10-year flood. We have seen 5 such floods in the last 18 months. We could go another 10 to 15 years without seeing any of these floods. It's very unlikely with climate change, in my opinion, but you know, I'm not a weather forecaster, so I don't know when the next rains will come. What I can say is, providing we keep on top of the maintenance of the drainage systems in most events, you know, and I'm not talking just small amounts of rain, I'm talking reasonable amounts of rain, the system will manage it. The water will flow through the system and the water will leave. When we have these large flooding events, I'm not sure the rivers can cope with the amount of rain that falls, as opposed to it being a purely down to a drainage issue for us. So, you know, I'm not sure about dredging all of the rivers either, but you know, if the rivers are not coping with the flooding, it's very unlikely that a culvert or a road drain will cope with our amount of water either. So I think the systems are there, they work well. What we want to do is ensure that they are working to their optimum all the time, and then that should support, keep the rainwater off the roads at normal events. And when we do have a strong rain event, at least we'll know the system is taking everything it can at that point before it possibly overtops. Hopefully that's answered more of the question.
Thank you, Carl. I know Mark wants to come back in.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sorry, we're playing the tag team now. In terms of the flooding service, if there are flood events that highlight through the subsequent investigations that there's been an issue with, you know, a gully or a pipe or something being ineffective or substandard, then that will be picked up in the study and recommendations made for those improvements to be made. To my knowledge, that hasn't been the case so far with the flood investigations. there's one going to be published in the next couple of weeks, which does look at an outfall system. But predominantly the issues we've had so far have been about the volume of rainfall and ground being saturated rather than pipes themselves. Different circumstances, and as we go forward, each event where properties are affected, there's an investigation, and that will pick up any of those kind of issues and look at improvements. I guess I would just caveat though, we do have areas of our settlements and our road network that lie in floodplains, and that is part of the function of a floodplain to flood. So we'd have to make sure any works that are put in don't prevent the floodplain operating. So there might be bits of the road network that we need to just let flood from time to time, so that the wider floodplain can do its job. Not all of the situations will be able to be solved, unfortunately, but widely speaking, those investigations will pick up where there's problems and recommend improved infrastructure or replacements that will factor in the future.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Grocott,
yeah, thank you both very much.
Okay, next we have Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at your report, thank you very much. It's needed, thank you very much. The most important service we've got is our infrastructure, isn't it? And we've let it go for years and years and years. Many years ago, I went to every community and town council throughout Monmouthshire and sat through the meetings. It was very interesting. 100% response, complete dissatisfaction with the service they were receiving. And that was 20 years ago, perhaps. Anyway, I think within the report, it is correct to prioritise the priority routes to make sure that those are open and clear and well maintained. But you've got the rest of the infrastructure. In your report, you're looking at identifying information as to where drains are. Are you going to work with the town and community councils on this? Because I would have thought this was something that could be a bit of real good teamwork. Individuals know where their drains are. They know the one that's been blocked up for the last 10 years. And I really think there's scope for working with town and community councils constructively, make it so they realise they have a real role to play in the maintenance of Monmouthshire. I always feel irritated when I drive over roads, and they'll probably be rural roads, obviously. The public responsibility is to keep the roads clear, isn't it, when you chuck stuff on it? I can drive through the lanes over carpets of shredded hedge and nothing is done. Eventually, it sort of gradually works back into the hedgerow, the road narrows, the concentrations on the track, the potholings become more defined. So there is a responsibility on the public to clear up after themselves, whether we be farming community or local residents, and this does happen. In your report, there's a reference to the tipping. Currently looking for quotes. I presume that's looking for quotations for stuff that's been swept off the roads. Referring to grass that if we cut it lies on the road, why don't we use mulching machines? I know you get moss in the verge, but does it really matter? A mulcher removes a lot of problems, I'm thinking. Communication with highways. It's very important you communicate properly. I don't get any response. I put my comments in, I have for years, and I don't expect a response. I was actually notified about the electric charging points in Usk, which I thought was very nice to know about that. A lot of work needed doing. When we look at potholes in the road, do we double task, as I term it? Does the report come in of a pothole, somebody goes out to look at it and says, oh yay, this needs doing, and so you're doubling the work? Or do we say, okay, there's the evidence there, the technology is there, you can see it, go do it in a sequence, build up a sequence to deal with it? I sometimes think we're talking about drains now, we're talking about interesting flooding situations, but in many situations, I think gutters would have been better. You've got a clear run, a clear sweep, your debris goes down into everything. I watched a system of drains being installed in my ward some years ago. Those drains get blocked considerably with the stuff that's dumped on them. If it had been a gutter running down the side, we wouldn't have had that problem. I've got another couple of questions. Chairman, landowners, we need to consult with the community. I had a phone call at the weekend from somebody who'd had a section of their hedge grubbed out. It did facilitate the drainage off the road. Apparently we've done a good job, but it would have been good, gentlemen, to have communicated with the owner of that land, who was quite happy with water discharging onto their ground, but really we do need to communicate better. Interestingly, I notice at the moment we have a lot of advertisements in the local paper, the Abergavenny Chronicle, almost a page full, advertising road closures. Are these adverts always necessary, and how much do they actually cost us? Because 2 situations within my ward, the road closures did not occur, so it was money wasted, really. So yeah, I think it's an excellent report. Well done, fellas, and I hope it all comes to fruition, Chairman. You've got a bit of back work to catch up on, lads. So thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, I'll try and answer. Yeah, I'll try and answer some of those questions. There are quite a lot there. The additional machine would be for the priority route, so I'm pleased to see that Councillor Smith is supporting our work. That would free up the other 2 vehicles that we've got to do more work in the other areas. So we're not suggesting that we pull any.
Yeah, just while you're on that one, Carl, because leading up to this budget, the present budget we're looking at, we've actually withdrawn a machine and an operative, haven't we?
Yes, so
that's all right, thank you.
Yeah, so from a cleansing perspective, we put in a suggestion to withdraw one of the small sweepers, the town sweepers, in the south of the county. The town sweepers generally do the town centres and the more urban areas. What this is a larger machine that does the main roads. So yeah, the proposal is one of the smaller town centre type sweepers that we were looking to take out. But you know, there is a valid point there, Councillor, that you know, as one of the rationale for the saving down in there is that we're seeing less reduction in litter complaints, but actually that litter could be going down the drain. So perhaps we are shooting ourselves in the foot in taking that one out as well, and something that I need to re-look at in light of this report as well. The 2 additional machines that Steve operate will be able to work in the wider area. Clearly, if town and community councils have queries and they know the area and the patches that they want us to go to, we can get in touch with them. I'm more than happy to go to community council meetings and have these conversations, because that's where you find the detail out. So, you know, please feel free and invite us to those.
How about can I interpose, Carl?
Yes.
How about sending community councils a map of their area and saying we would appreciate your assistance in identification? You know, go straight in.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to look at that. We know we've got roughly 25,000 drains across the county. We know where most of them are. The reason for plotting them and is not just about, it's not because we don't know where all of our drains are, but plotting them with the machinery allows us to pinpoint everything and what works need to be done there in the future. That's what the code of practice is about scheduling work in the future and on a risk-based assessment. So it's not that we don't know where all the drains are, but it is about plotting them so they're on a system so that we can overlap them with flooding detail and overlap them with other parts of the highway asset thing. We've bought 2 additional mulchers in the grounds maintenance section for doing exactly what you said, mulching the grass back in. We've also bought 2 additional collection mowers to take out some of the grass from areas to encourage wildflower growing. So they were bought with grant money this year. We haven't seen the full benefit of them this year through COVID, but hopefully next year we'll see a much bigger benefit with using those machines as well. So hopefully we're dealing with that. Potholes and drains, we do try and keep on top of it all, but it is a difficult challenge with the resources that we have. So yeah, I'm happy for Steve to step in on the more technical issues of some of those questions. On the road closure questions, once I don't know whether Mark or Sue-Ann could answer that. I believe we have to put adverts in the paper, but I'm sure they can answer more fully. So, Steve.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Chair.
Steve, do you want to come back in, and then Mark can come in after?
Please. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Smith. It was just that question about the potholes. No, at the moment, unless there's been an accident or a position where we might feel there's a claim, we react by sending a team who can deal with the issue. So if someone's reported a pothole, we will send the team out who have got tarmac and are able to repair that pothole, either temporarily or permanently. If those guys are concerned about the condition of the road as a greater picture, more potholes, more damage, we report that back to the foreman, and then we revisit the site and find out what it is we need to do to bring that road up to a standard or a safety safe working level. So we always send a team who can act upon the work that is required. Then we take it back into the office and develop it further if it's required. So yeah, if that helps answer your question. We react to the situation, then we step back and find out what else we can do. If the work that the guys bring back, because they've been empowered to report these things back to our foreman, is expensive or takes too long, that's when we speak to Sue-Ann, and Sue-Ann speaks to us, and that's when Sue-Ann's evidence-based maintenance program report will work, because it allows her to program and identify the need in greater detail. So that's how we do it generally.
Thank you.
Mark, are you ready to come back in, or would you like to come back to Councillor Smith outside?
No, that's fine, Chair. If you're happy for me to come in now.
Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, in terms of the question about the press notices, yeah, we do have to advertise traffic regulation orders and some other actions in the press bilingually. There are some relaxations in recent kind of COVID measures where the Welsh Government's waived that if we have to do emergency actions. So that's really helpful, but yeah, on the whole, we do have to put those adverts in the press.
It's just that at the moment, Mark, I mean, it's almost a full page of, yes, bilingual adverts. And you just think, gosh, this must be supporting this paper. That's fine, I read the paper, but it's costing us a lot of money. How much does an advert cost? Have you any idea?
I'll have to come back to you on the cost, I'm afraid,
yeah,
Councillor,
that's right.
but
thank you.
It's not a key business.
Yeah, they never used to appear, but certainly they're appearing hugely now. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Now we've got Councillor Edwards wants to come back in.
Thank you. It's very good to have this opportunity being on Strong Communities this morning for a change. I appreciate Carl and Steve that they're playing catch up all the time, so that is very difficult with resources and everything. But am I right in saying there's two issues I've got, that you cannot use what we used to call gouts into farmers' fields like they used to? I think perhaps there's a question over that. And I've got big issues with people that come to live in the countryside now. They want more and more signage, more speed signage in villages, which you'd be very difficult to speed through. And of course, we are littering the countryside that doesn't look attractive with more and more signage. And sometimes they're quite unnecessary. And the thing of litter is a big issue with people throwing stuff out of their cars, blocking drains, and it doesn't take much more in some instances what you'd think is like a matchstick, but it's diverting water. And on the news they've had cameras are all very technical, but to do something with litter that causes such a big problem, whether they're grass cutting or simply broken drains. And I don't know really what your answer is to that, but I do appreciate you're really up against it. It's such hard work, and you know, trying to keep everybody happy isn't, you know, it's just not possible. But I suppose you work out year on year the priorities, which you have to make sure that you're reactive to those before they come to be a big problem. But that in itself isn't easy, because one year you'll have a lot of floods in one area, and then it might be all right this time, and then it floods somewhere else. So it is a very, very difficult task for you, and I really do appreciate you, your workforce and your officers for all that you're trying to do. And also, now that we're and have been a very rural county, we haven't got a lot of public transport that people then, as Carl says, you've got 3 or 4 cars to a household, parents working, children managing to drive, and parking, as you know, comes up with a big issue when we're doing planning and the space is provided. And as Dimitri says, then they end up on the grass, ploughing the grass up when it's wet, and that goes into the road or whatever. But I don't envy you, because I dare say everybody shouts at you. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Just on the part on the litter, we've got a big education programme running now that came through Strong Community Select probably 18 months ago. It did get slowed down by COVID in the beginning, but hopefully some of you would have seen the big signs on the side of the refuse vehicles asking people not to litter. We are joining up the campaign now that is being run by Keep Wales Tidy to tackle verge side litter. It's recognised across Wales, well, across the UK, that it's one of the major issues now, finally. So hopefully some additional legislation will come in where we can fine car drivers that we see throw in litter, and we are working with Keep Wales Tidy on their campaigns to try and reduce it. It is a big issue. It doesn't take a lot of litter. A plastic bag over the top of the drain and a few twigs on top of it has effectively blocked the drain quite quickly. So it is a big issue to us. Hopefully the additional sweeper as well. I don't want to use a sweeper for picking up other people's rubbish that shouldn't have thrown it there, but we recognise that the sweeper will make a difference as well in clearing that.
Thank you very much for that answer, Carl. But as you know, where I live, I don't see the lorries or anything going by. But I think, you know, in schools and so on, I should think by now they all need to appreciate that the countryside is only wonderful, but they have to appreciate that it's, you know, that we all benefit if the litter isn't there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Whilst I've got Steve Lane attending the meeting, can I just ask a question with regards to granting 18-month road closure permits? I've got a lot of upset residents in Undy with regards to Elms Lane at the moment, and obviously I did have a response from Highway saying it's legislation for 18-month closures, but looking into that, it says minimum 18 months. So I just wondered, what does it have to be 18 months that we're given? Because obviously at this moment in time when people are in lockdown, exercising is the most important thing for everyone, and obviously they can't use this route, which is off the main road, it's going through countryside, and they really want this road reopened.
Thank you, Chair. I'm probably not the best person to ask that question.
Okay.
It will be Paul Keeble and his team, but yes, the duration, the length of the closures would be presented by the customer, the client, the contractor, to the highways team, and they would ask questions about how long it's for, what the duration for, what it's for, how can they mitigate any of those sort of delays, and that's all part of the process which Paul Keeble's team engage in. So, but yes.
Okay, I'll go back to Paul then.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any more questions, members? No?
Can I just ask a very quick one, Chairman?
Of
the
course.
Proposed vehicles, how are they going to be fuelled? Are we complying with our aspirations for the climate, or are we still on diesel? Because we're looking at electric fire engines, believe.
I can answer that, Councillor, we've trialled quite a few of the larger vehicles with electrics, and they haven't been completely up to the standard that we need. So it's an ongoing piece of work. We are also carrying on the work on hydrogen. It's likely that the next fleet that we get will be diesel powered, but certainly for the smaller vehicles like vans and all, we are bringing in quite a lot of electric vehicles in those areas. We are about to procure with Welsh Government, or an element of Welsh Government funding, a new electric refuse vehicles. They seem to be more on the market than the sweepers and the gully suckers electric versions of those at the moment. So hopefully when we get this new refuse vehicle in, we can put it through its paces, and we'll know then when we're replacing fleet in coming years whether it's up to the job of delivering services in Monmouthshire.
Whether you stuck up an alley. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Steve, do you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Smith. We have looked at electric vehicles for the Jetta. At the moment, everything's focused on urban cityscapes where a Jetta can go to an urban yard. He can drive around 1,000 gullies within about 10-mile radius of his depot and empty gullies. So in our situation where these machines can do about 70 miles of mileage and work for 7 hours in a day, we exceed that limit many days in a week, let alone a month or a year. So electric capacities, like at the moment, this design and its abilities specific to cityscapes, not rural, large, expansive landscapes like Monmouthshire got. So we've looked and we've seen, and even the company are not recommending electric to us until they've sorted out in the cities.
No, thank you, Chairman. It might be useful to just make a little comment to that effect in your report so that people know we are considering the climate still. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll quickly sum up on the 2 items. Okay, so item 4, Councillor Petruni questioned, are 8 objectives the most efficient way of working, and how does it fit around the social justice strategy? And if plans overlap, you may be duplicating work. He also has concerns around finance and felt that it may have been an afterthought, and wanted to know if the budget, and also stated the budget doesn't reflect our strategic plan. Sorry. Thank you, Mark. I didn't realise I forgot I pushed my mic up to have a drink of tea. He also questioned, at what point does the equality plan and social justice plan affect the budget from the start? He also asked a question around the European settlement status and wanted to know how many EU nationals are in care homes suffering from cognitive problems, which I said I would follow up after this meeting. Councillor Powell come back with, and also Councillor Edwards, stating that sometimes you can't avoid overlapping, and life doesn't integrate and things can feed into one another. Val Smith highlighted some typos and also raised a question around the coloured print in some reports can be difficult for other users, and also questioned access for all and wanted an update, which obviously we've confirmed those meetings are going ahead. So if Councillor Smith wishes to attend the meetings, we can send her the details of those. And then lastly, on item 5, there's quite a lot, so bear with me. Councillor Petruni agreed with the report, but he questioned parking on greens and the loosening of mud. Does this contribute to block drains, and how can we stop that? Cutting grass during spring and summer, he's receiving a number of complaints that we do not collect, so we will provide a road sweeper. Councillor Ruth Edwards also raised concerns with long grass in drains and obviously recommended that people cut the grass more often. She also highlighted that improved programming of hedge cutting and road sweeping scheduling would be a huge benefit, especially in our countryside. She highlighted some Whitehall Lane issues within her ward. She questioned, do we recruit apprenticeships to the team? Carl confirmed we have 5 new starters with engineering backgrounds, and Ruth come back in and highlighted the need for women. Gouts. Ruth, can you just confirm what you meant with regards to gouts into farmers' fields? What was that point? I did mean to message you on Teams. Councillor Edwards? We'll have to pick up on that and read.
That was actually, can I help, Jim? That was actually water discharging onto farmers' fields. You no longer have a right to do so.
Steve, do you want to just confirm what that was about? No. Okay. Ruth obviously raised concerns with out-of-county people wanting to litter the countryside with signage. Councillor Maureen Powell asked a question on, do we have any power on encouraging Welsh Government to carry out maintenance on trunk roads? Councillor Groker suggested that the previous systems were inadequate, and are we planning adequate drainage systems for the future? Councillor Smith, with regards to recommendation 2.4, identifying drainage, suggested that we work with town and community councils. She also questioned why we don't use mulching machines. She also asked, with regards to potholes, do we double task with regards to inspection and executing the work? Again, she raised a point with regards to communicating with landowners regarding hedge removals. Councillor Smith also questioned the costs with regards to road closures in the papers, so someone could come back to us with those costs. And she also asked with regards to the fuel types of the new vehicles. So I think that was it, unless I miss anything. If anybody wants to highlight anything, I just want to thank officers for presenting that report. Carl, your team have worked really hard this last year. I know that we engaged quite a bit over Christmas because Mago was hit particularly hard during the floods. So I just want to thank you and your team for all your hard work. Next, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. I know that Councillor Bertrini asked for a breakdown of agency costs incurred so far for 2021. Jonathan hasn't been able to do that yet, but the team are working on that, so that will come forward. I know a lot of you are substitutes, but is there any problems you can see, Dimitri? No? Okay. And the Forward Work programme for strong communities, we have public toilet strategy coming to us in April to scrutinise the progress on implementing the public toilet strategy prior to updating Welsh Government. If anyone would like to recommend something that we could look at, please let Hazel or I know. And it's just to note, Cabinet and Council work plan as per the schedule. And our next meeting is the 29th of April. I know many of you have noted how much you've enjoyed attending Strong Communities today, so you are always more than welcome to attend. And I would just like to thank all the substitutes for attending, because that really helps with regards to chairing a meeting and a meeting being useful. So unless anyone would like to raise anything else, I'll now draw it to a close. Thank you everyone. Much, take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Lisa. Very well.
Thank you, Lisa. Maureen. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
I very enjoyed being part of the meeting and having the chance to also thank our wonderful officers. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.